7:31, we're going to convene the Mendocino Council of Governments to order. And first thing on our agenda is roll call.
I'll be calling the roll today. Director Jim Brown,
I'm here.
Director Greta Connie, Director Tess Albin Smith, Director Scott Ignacio,
Here.
Director John Haschak,
Here.
the Caltrans representative, Director Tashana Alstrand,
Here.
and Chair Jurdy.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, the next thing we do is we convene as the Regional Transportation Planning Agency, recess, and then reconvene as the Policy Advisory Committee with Caltrans. Following that, our consent calendar. Do we have a motion to convene as the Policy Advisory Committee?
So moved. Second.
We have a roll call.
Director Brown,
Yes.
Director Connie. Oh, I'm sorry, she's absent. Are we on, I'm sorry, are we on convening as the Policy Advisory Committee?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, we don't usually vote on that one.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
It's hard to keep track.
You threw me off there for a
Okay.
moment.
All right, well then we'll just go straight into consent calendar, which
That's
is
right.
adoption of resolution 2021-14, making continued findings for pursuant to Assembly Bill 361 to conduct public meetings remotely for MCOG's legislative advisory bodies during COVID-19, and as well as approval of the October 4th, 2021 minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved. I'll second that.
Okay, can we have a roll call for that?
Director Brown,
Yes.
Director Ignacio,
Yes.
Director Haschak,
Yes.
Director Alstrand,
Yes.
and Director Jurdy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, following that, we're going to have, do we have any public expression on items that are not on the agenda? There are multiple ways to participate in today's meeting, all posted on the agenda. And I just want to note that Councilmember, Board Member Tess Albin Smith is in the meeting, so we now are at 6 or at 5 members. Okay.
And we did not receive any public expression prior to the meeting.
And I'm not seeing anyone in the chat function raising their hand, asking to speak. All right. Okay, well then we'll go into the regular calendar, which is item number 7, which is review and discuss the draft 2022 Regional Transportation Improvement Program.
All right, James is going to talk to us about the draft 2022 RTIP.
Good afternoon. Before you use the RTIP, it's fairly short and sweet. We can go over each section real quick if you'd like. First one's an executive summary, just talks about who we are and what this is. 2 is more general info on us, as well as who to submit this to. And then we get into the background of the RTIP. And then the fun stuff is section 4 and beyond, talking about projects that have been completed and ones that are programmed or proposed for programming. Section 4 you'll see is highlighted in yellow because at the moment I have 2 projects put in there, one being North State Street, which is for all intents and purposes complete, and Eastside Potter Valley Road, which is the county's project, is now under construction. But I want to double check with all the other agencies to make sure that I'm not leaving anything out. Section 5 is just a quick discussion about the outreach process. It's a little larger than the previous RTIP because we had a bit of a different approach to public outreach this time in terms of the RTP, which I think Loretta will probably talk about next. But we did a lot more stuff virtually rather than in person. I think at the last meeting, I let you guys know that we had just received 1 request from the county for the call for projects, and it wasn't really to program anything new, but strictly to adjust the prior funding commitment that was made in the previous RTIP of $1.62 million for construction. They're proposing to take $138,000 of that and put it towards the right-of-way phase and leave the remaining unprogrammed, so that when they do come for allocation for the design phase, they can tap into that. There is a second table under section 6, because during this process, we're going to try to program all of the remaining CRISA STIP funds. And so the county, I believe, is still going to put theirs towards Ackerman Creek. I've been talking with Ukiah, and I believe they want to put theirs towards phase 2 of the downtown streetscape plan. But I haven't been able to discuss this with Fort Bragg yet, so that's why there's a nice big question mark there. 7 is based on the previous table and the rest of the programming that goes in there. And until I have all of the, until I know what all the CRISA funds are going to, I wanted to leave that blank. So that will be filled in when you guys see the final draft in December. Section 10 is still incomplete. I'm working with Caltrans on that and talking with Tasha last week, I believe it was. I have at least one potential candidate for this section. Let me back up for a second. So section 10 is talking about identifying potential state routes within the county that could be potential candidates for their highways to boulevards conversion pilot program. And what that is they're looking to take underutilized highways and add complete streets elements to them. And so I had talked to Nephili about that real quick, and then Tasha sort of confirmed the same one that first came to mind with Nephili, and that was State Route 222, also known as Talmadge Road. So there will be more on that in the final draft. And other than that, you can see the detailed project information, section 15 on the second to last page. That is the programming that's proposed at the moment. There will be one additional chart there to track the CRISA STIP funds. So that's where we are at the moment. Are there any questions?
So James, not a question, but just to clarify. So you're showing us on this agenda item a draft of what will come back in December, and the projects are projects we've seen before. They've been in the works for some time, and that's the County North State Street intersection, the Ukiah roundabout at Low Gap and Bush, Ukiah Downtown Streetscape, Fort Bragg Route 1, pedestrian improvements at South Main Street, Caltrans Walla Downtown project, and planning from MCOG. So that those are the projects for the upcoming STIP that we'd be voting on in December.
Correct. Yeah, and probably later this week, I'm going to put out a notice later this week or the beginning of next for the public hearing. There's a 10-day notice period for a public hearing for this, so I want to make sure to get that out on time. There will be one more table in there. It could have the same projects, it could have different projects, and that's for the CRISA STIP funds. Looking at this, it'll have one new project from the county, and then I'm not sure what Fort Bragg wants to do.
So essentially the only new programming, and it's technically not even programming, but the new funding will be proposed in this document is the additional approximately $200,000 for to complete the environmental component of the Wallala project. So everything else in here is previously approved funding. Because we did not get requests other than the supplemental request for the Wallala project, we did not get any new project programming requests. The remaining funding amount in our from the STIP fund estimate will just be carried forward as an unprogrammed balance that we could program either 2 years from now in the 2024 RTIP or through an amendment process anytime between approval of this RTIP and the next.
I have a question for Nephili or perhaps for Caltrans. If the federal infrastructure bill passes, is it anticipated that any of those funds would flow through the RTIP process, or would they be flowing are you hearing that would more likely flow directly to cities and counties and directly to Caltrans?
No, that's a good question. I don't know if Tasha has a sense of that, but I really can't say. I haven't heard a lot about how that might come through. I expect it would probably flow through multiple channels. It's a potential that we could see a STIP augmentation or a mid-cycle STIP, which is what we had earlier this year with the CRISA funding. So we had a mid-cycle STIP program. So we could see something else like that, or it could be an entirely independent program.
Yeah, I wondered that as well. I don't have any additional information.
Do we have any board member questions or comments? Do we need questions from members of the public on this item?
I'll just-
Jen, I want to make sure that you know that Greta has joined us from Willits. Okay, go ahead.
I just want to add also, we typically, although this time it wasn't really critical because we didn't receive any substantial funding requests, we typically try to bring this a draft to you before the meeting at which it has to be adopted, because when we do have programming requests, sometimes board members want to review that ahead of time. And so this was the opportunity to do that. In this case, there wasn't a whole lot to review because there's not a whole lot changing.
I'm not seeing any raised hands for this
No.
item. Okay, well then I guess we'll conclude that item and we'll go on to item number 8, which is presentation and discussion of the draft. I guess this is slightly different. The 22 Regional Transportation Plan and Active Transportation Plan.
It's very similar name, but different document. And Loretta will be taking this one and providing a presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board members. You have my written staff report in your board packet. And as we've been reporting to you regularly over the past year or more, MCOG staff has been working with local agencies in the state and various partners to update the Regional Transportation Plan and Active Transportation Plan, which the RTP is the primary transportation planning document for our region. So the draft was posted to MCOG's website on October 15th to give substantial time for board member and public review before we bring it to you for adoption in December. And we've sent out email notifications and press releases and are trying to get the word out to the public that that draft is available. We provided an overview of the draft to our TAC at the last meeting, and we will be asking the TAC for a recommendation on the plan at the November TAC meeting. So I will now be sharing a brief PowerPoint with you just to give you some highlights of where the changes are. So when you review it over the next month or so, you know, it may direct your attention to certain items that you're interested in. So I think I can go ahead now with the PowerPoint, and feel free to ask questions, and Navili and James can chime in wherever needed. Okay, so let me screen share that. Is everyone seeing that?
No, Loretta, we can't see it.
Okay. Okay.
No.
Are you seeing that?
Yes,
Yes.
now we see it.
Thank you. Okay, so board members, this is our presentation to the MCOG board on the 2022 Regional Transportation Plan and Active Transportation Plan. The final plan will be presented for your consideration for adoption in December. The last RTP was adopted in February of 2018, and we are now on a 4-year update cycle with this next update due by February 5th of 2022. And since we don't meet in January, we're bringing it to you in December. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, as you know, our outreach for this update has been virtual. We began in the winter of last year, continuing through this fall with our public outreach. We updated the public participation plan as required, which was adopted by the board last December. We've conducted a needs assessment to identify needs and deficiencies. We've mainly used Social Pinpoint, an online platform for public outreach. We widely circulated its availability by distributing emails and flyers to numerous groups and posted on numerous social media sites. And it included online survey and mapping tools. It was posted on MCOG's website, and we believe it got a fair amount of visits and usage. The numbers there. This was as of last Friday. We had received 126 comments, 113 survey responses, and 45 budget responses. We also posted a pre-recorded video on the county's YouTube channel and on MCOG's website, and gave virtual presentations at the Caltrans District 1 quarterly tribal meeting, at the various, most of the municipal advisory councils and the County Climate Action Advisory Committee. And we conducted outreach to local and state agencies and partners, and collected data from the county and the 4 cities, Caltrans, the Mendocino Transit Authority, the 10 tribes, the airports, the harbors, and the rail agencies. And we coordinated with agency staff, all in order to inform the various modes that we were updating. So the RTP components. So as you know, the RTP is not just a listing of capital improvement projects. It contains the goals and policies and objectives to guide our strategy for operating and managing the transportation system. The modal elements themselves include a needs assessment section, an action plan of short and long range projects, required performance measures, and then there's a financial and funding constraints section. The layout of the document starts with an executive summary, which is kind of a recap of everything. And then there's an introduction section. There are really no significant changes in the introduction, but rather an update of basic information. We gave a pretty detailed listing due to the virtual outreach process. We did some more detail than usual there. We included some key findings from Social Pinpoint data. I'll just read to you 1 or 2 of those as an example. One key finding from our respondents was that nearly 62% of respondents said their main form of transportation on a typical weekday was to drive alone, while a little over 21% drove with one other person. Approximately 13.27% walked or biked, and about 3.5% used transit. And just one other key finding from Social Pinpoint, just as an example, nearly 16% of respondents indicated that they or someone in their household owned an electric vehicle. Also in the introduction section, we updated the countywide issues and concerns, and under that heading was information on greenhouse gases and climate change information. And regarding the greenhouse gas and climate change information, we expanded the information on climate change. We added information about the governor's 5 executive orders related to that. And we noted that, we updated the summary list of things that MCOG has done and is doing to address climate change. And we've noted that MCOG's past and future activities will continue to support these efforts. And then the next section are the goals, objectives, and policies. So I'll briefly list each goal and highlight where the major changes were, so you can look for those. Under the climate change goal, the goals, policies, and objectives were expanded to reference the reduced vehicle miles traveled and governor's executive orders regarding greenhouse reduction in zero emission vehicles, and to address those. And under the land use section, we added new objectives and policies in support of healthy communities and affordable housing. Previously, there was a goal on Vision Mendocino 2030 implementation. That no longer has its own section, but rather we've incorporated that into the land use and other sections where we felt was more appropriate. Next is the complete street goals. We just changed the policies there to reflect Caltrans' new funding program that's within their shop for complete streets. Under goods movement, we revised this significantly regarding freight rail and alternative goods movement in light of the changes that are happening with the railroad. Under transportation security and emergency response, we've added policies regarding emergency evacuations. And under the state highway system, we did delete a prior policy that called for prioritization of all phases of the Willis bypass. So phase 2 of the bypass we recognize is beyond the time frame of this plan, so that's been deleted as a priority. And then there was a policy also to consider funding projects that maintain or improve level of service. We've deleted that in recognition of the fact that the state favors projects that reduce VMT, and there is a thought that increasing level of service may increase VMT, although that's not always the case. We did delete that policy. Under local streets and roads, we added policies to support timely delivery of local projects and provide agencies with tools. Under the active transportation goal, it was slightly expanded to emphasize walking and biking. No really significant changes to the policies and objectives, but some were moved to the new public health and equity section. Under the transit goal, policies were added to assist MTA and the senior centers with grant applications and provide support for transportation services and mobility solutions by senior centers and others. And under the rail transportation goal, the goals, policies, and objectives were all revised, again, to reflect the loss of freight rail along NWP due to the legislation that's restructuring the NCRA into a new trail agency. Nothing changed in the aviation section as far as the goals. In the maritime section, we added a policy to consider projects that enhance economic viability of harbor facilities and strengthen local economies. And then under tribal transportation, we added an objective and policy to provide opportunities for the tribes to have early input on regional transportation issues. However, we have been doing this for some time by having a standing agenda item on TAC agendas to invite the tribe to address the TAC, have early input, but we wanted to put this in writing as a policy. Under public health and equity, this is a new section with an added goal, objectives and policies to encourage healthier lifestyles through increased walking and biking, and some policies from active transportation and land use have been moved here. And with an added goal, objectives and policies to encourage healthier lifestyles through increased walking and biking, and some policies from active transportation and land
James,
use.
can you mute your mic?
I don't know what's happening. Something's repeating. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Loretta. I don't know, that might have just been on your end. I'm not hearing the repeat.
Okay. And then finally, there's a section with financial policies, and we deleted a policy here to consider acting as the implementing agency when applying for funding. And then we added a policy to consider applying for planning and capital grants. And again, we already do apply for planning and capital grants, but that just puts this in writing. So next, we're going on to the actual modal elements. And there's quite a bit in each modal element. So we are focusing only on the action plan section, short and long range projects. So it starts with the state highways element. Under the action plan there, you'll see the projects listed. And this is based on all of these modes, information that we've gathered from plans and from conversations, but we still may be receiving comments from local agencies if we have missed something here. Short range projects right now are State Route 1, Walla Downtown Streetscape Improvements, State Route 1, Garcia River Flooding, State Route 20, Blosser Lane Intersection Safety, and US 101 North State Street Interchange Improvements, and US 101 Hopland ADA project. These are projects that Caltrans is looking at in the short term. And in the long term, they'll be looking at other 101 area interchanges, a project on State Route 1 at Pudding Creek, a project on State Route 20 South Main Street in Willits, and on State Route 222 on Talmadge Road. In the County Roads and City Streets Action Plan, short range projects for the various agencies. I don't know if you want me to read all these. It's kind of a lot of reading.
We do have maybe a good timely question from the public. Maybe this good. It's just a long report. So Jessica Stallata.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I just had a question, Loretta, on that list. I don't know if you guys are aware of it, but Tom Fitzgerald with Caltrans has been to the last few Round Valley Area Municipal Advisory Council meetings, and it sounds like he's working on trying to get funding for State Route 162 through downtown Covelo, and I wonder if that would be good to have on the list too, or how that works. So just thought I'd put that in your awareness. Hopefully it happens.
Okay, we can follow up with Caltrans on that. Who was it that you spoke with?
Tom Fitzgerald.
Okay, we'll follow up on that, Jessica. And if changes are needed, we'll add it in the final.
Awesome, thank you.
And I'll just add, I'm really glad to hear that Tom has been continuing to go to those meetings. We do have the needs, the safety needs and operational concerns that were identified for multiple locations in Covelo identified. So even if we don't get whatever their specific improvement that they end up deciding on, even if that specific improvement doesn't end up listed, we have at this point captured, I think, the concerns within the area. So it could, the document should be able to support whatever project they implement.
Thank you. Director
Thank
Haschak.
you.
Thank you. I think what Jessica was talking about was Tom Fitzgerald is applying for a Clean California grant to do some infrastructure improvements there on the Highway 162 to kind of slow down traffic through engineering.
Oh, okay, thank you. So that, and Tasha may want to speak more about this. I know that Caltrans District 1 has a list of several projects within Mendocino County that they are prioritizing for that program. And I know that downtown Covelo was one of them. I don't know exactly what that project concept included.
Yeah, so that this list of projects I had planned to share later, but they are still waiting for approval from the headquarters Clean California program. Jessica, was this the project that you were referring to?
Yes, that is. So thanks for the clarification, John.
Okay, yeah, so that is the scope of that project includes angled parking, street trees, raised planters, art, and lighting. So some of that might change. The headquarters might want to see some modifications to the projects, but that's currently what's in the scope for downtown Covelo.
And I'm hoping it starts at the very beginning, south end of town, where it drops to 25 miles an hour too, because people are going 50 at the grocery store. Otherwise, if we don't slow them down right away, they're gonna keep going. So I'll follow up more later. Thank you.
Thank you. So on the county, on this list, the county has some storm damage and fire damage projects and annual maintenance programs. And then on their short range, North State Street improvements and the East Side Potter Valley Road reconstruction. Ukiah has some road reconstruction projects, an Orr Street Bridge project, the Low Gap Bush Roundabout, traffic signals at Golby and Main and Golby and Raw, and the next phase of their downtown streetscape improvements, and some intersection improvements at Perkins and Orchard. Willits included some road rehab projects, working on State Route 20 Blosser Lane intersection safety with Caltrans and their rail trail project. Fort Bragg has some improvements on South Main Street, bike and pedestrian improvements, and street rehab projects. And Point Arena is going to be working on some renovation at Riverside Drive and Center Street, their Mill Street reconstruction project, and Winday Hollow Road improvements. Under long range projects for the county, the next phase of their North State Street intersection improvements and the second phase of East Side Potter Valley, and looking into the Orchard Avenue extension. Willits, looking at the East Valley Street Bridge replacement, improvement at Brown's Corner intersection, and Railroad Avenue extension. Fort Bragg has listed just deferred maintenance, and there was an old project listed, which Fort Bragg may end up taking out. I'm still trying to get information on parallel facility on State Route 1, to State Route 1, improving their circulation system, and a second emergency access to Noyo. Point Arena lists long-term projects as improved access to the Cove and Pier, and looking at a roundabout at State Route 1 and Lake Street. And I don't think I'll list all of these. This has been the active transportation element. We listed the short range projects for each of the agencies. We'll just direct your attention there when you look into the plan yourself. The short range projects, unless there are any questions, I can slow down and back up. And then we listed the long-term projects also, long-range projects. I don't want to move too fast, but I also don't want to just, read if you don't want that. And then in the public transit action section, the things that MTA will be looking at in the next 10 years under their short range plan. A priority is to update their short range transit development plan, for which they're seeking grant funding. They want to do a transit hub location plan, a rural mobility solutions pilot project. They're looking at bus stop improvement and revamping their solar canopy project and vehicle replacement in the short range. And in the long range, they're looking at designing and construction of a new admin and operations building. Under the rail action plan, there are no short or long range projects for the NCRA, as it's changing focus from the rail agency to the new trail agency. We did include some short range projects of California Western. They plan to restore service through tunnel number 1, offer freight service to Willits, and increase ridership and improve their track structure in the short term. And in the long term, they're looking at maintaining and improving their Willits and Fort Bragg stations, equipment and track structure, increasing freight traffic and ridership. And then they've also indicated interest in acquiring a portion of the NWP line to preserve access to the interstate rail system. In the aviation action plan, there's just some pretty routine projects listed in both the short range and long range for all of the public airports. in the Maritime Action Plan.
Loretta,
of Noyo.
Loretta, it looks like Director Haschak has his hand raised.
Oh, thanks.
I'm sorry.
Loretta, I had a question about the rail plan. And when you said the
Yes.
Great Western Trail Railroad would offer freight service to Willits, where would that be coming from?
California Western Railroad. Well, they hope that once they improve their tunnels, that they can offer freight from Fort Bragg to Willits.
Okay.
And this, I'll just add that this section, it has changed significantly since the last RTP. So I would encourage board members to look at this section. You know, this is the opportunity to make comments and have those comments incorporated into the final draft that'll be back in December.
Yes, thank you. Under Maritime, Noyo Harbor has listed routine maintenance, and the Corps of Engineers will continue to dredge their channel, but other than that, they don't have a list of short-range projects. The Point Arena Harbor has a project to raise the elevation of the parking lot and a project to replace the wooden fender pilings on the pier. Under long-term projects for Noyo Harbor, a long-term need is for the breakwater project. And then they would like some new storage areas for fishing related uses. They'd like to acquire property for additional berths. And then they have a list of projects in the appendix. Point Arena Harbor, long-term would like some projects to support the commercial fishing industry and pursuing growth opportunities at the pier and possibly developing a small city park near the harbor. Under tribal transportation, in the tribal section is a little bit different. There's not really short and long range plans per se, it just describes what the different tribes are about or what they're doing. We do mention the State Route 162 Corridor Trail project here. It extends through the Round Valley Reservation tribal lands. And then the Redwood Valley tribe did mention a project to develop an emergency exit route. MCOG's actions related to the tribal section is implementing the State Route 162 multi-use trail. And then we have a focus on enhancing our partnerships and continuing to include tribal participation in the TAG meetings. And we would also like to consider starting to hold annual tribal transportation workshops to help the tribe as needed and to help seek funding for tribal projects, just to increase our tribal communication and partnership. So the next steps are we invite board members' comments. If you can, we would like to receive your comments within 3 weeks, which is the 22nd. That would give us about a week to incorporate any needed changes into the final document that we will be presenting to you. We will continue over the next month or so with our virtual public outreach and soliciting public comment, and we will incorporate any public comment as appropriate into the final that we provide to you. And the final document with the proposed environmental document, a proposed negative declaration, will be scheduled for consideration of your approval at the December MCOG meeting. All documents are posted on our website, and you know, we welcome your comments or questions now, or if you have plenty of time to review the draft before we present it to you. And I'd like to ask Vasili if she has anything to add, or James.
Sure, I'll add just a couple things. So of course, we'll be taking public comments up until adoption of the plan, but the sooner we get those public comments, board comments, and agency comments, the better, because then we're able to, you know, make any appropriate changes to the document before the final draft. I would encourage board members to look through the document. Loretta's done a great job of kind of highlighting the areas of significant change, so that can be a guide for your review. It looks like we've got a comment in the chat. asking, yes, we'll do public comment in just a moment. There will be an opportunity for public comment today. Yes.
Yeah.
So, and then one other thing I just wanted to clarify in the goals and policies, the change as far as prioritizing funding for phase 2 of the Willits bypass. We do still recognize that there were intended to be 2 phases of that project, but because it is not anticipated, implementation is not anticipated within the 20-year timeframe of this RTP, it did not seem appropriate to have that specific policy included in this document. However, there are other policies that could still accommodate that, because we do have policies that would prioritize seek funding for priority improvements that are consistent with the route concept. So it's still, the idea is still covered without that specific policy. So that's all I wanted to add.
Great. Well, thanks,
Okay.
Loretta.
I can stop screen sharing, and I will follow up and send a PDF of this presentation so you will know where those highlights can be found. Thank you.
Thanks, Loretta. Looking for board member comments or members of the public. Director Alban-Smith.
Oh, Director Alban-Smith, you might be muted.
How's that?
Yes.
Is that better? Okay. Where would I find a copy of the environmental documentation to review? And are all these documents on the website currently?
The draft RTP is on the website now. James has prepared a draft negative declaration. It is awaiting signature, and then it will be loaded onto our website. The review for that, public review period for that starts in a couple of days. So we've got a little, so 30-day public review period. So it'll be available in the next couple of days.
Would it be possible to send an alert out so that it's available for review?
Yes.
Thank you.
George Reinhardt.
Yeah, thank you for this meeting. I wish I had gotten on time, but I had a little trouble. I didn't realize we had to send a request for a link. So, do people really believe the skunk train's going to do anything with that tunnel? I mean, this is just such a joke. Honestly, they didn't do anything until they talked the city of Fort Bragg into writing grants for them. And the city of Fort Bragg did that for a few years. Tess can correct me if I'm wrong about their record, but I think it's pretty horrible, actually. And I don't think we can rely on the skunk train to do this stuff. And it's all about them trying to establish a phony identity as a carrier of personnel and being a legitimate railroad. They're not a legitimate railroad. They're a toy train, you know, fantasy enterprise of the Hart family. And I think the county ought to be a little more realistic about where the skunk train's coming from and what they're all about. They're trying an eminent domain challenge right now over here in Fort Bragg, and they tried that over in Willits. So I think we ought to be pretty clear about who these people are and what they're about. So that's just my thought. I also want to say, on a separate topic, we need to have safer bicycle lanes for Pudding Creek Road. I know a lot of people who ride their bikes along there, and it's really ought to be on our long-term planning. It's difficult. I can see why the engineering would be tough, but we really should be considering safe bike routes north of Fort Bragg, because there are a lot of us who would like to use our bikes if they could be safer. Thank you very much for allowing public comment. This is a really encouraging meeting. Thanks.
Thank you.
Peter McNamee.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to to address you. I have a couple of questions. The first has to do when the first screen was presented relative to the transportation plan. I noted that there was a item listed as greenhouse gas and climate change information, but the presentation didn't touch on that unless I missed something. Is that something that's being worked on, or can someone answer that? Where that's at?
Yes, we just basically, we didn't get into detail on any of the sections, but we noted that in the introduction section that we had updated the information on greenhouse gases and climate change, just to direct the board's attention to that section in the introduction. And then we also noted when we were talking about the goals and policies that the climate change related goals have been updated. So we didn't get into the detail on any of the various goals or modes, but just directed the board's attention to where those changes could be found. So that's in the introduction section and under the climate change goals.
So if as a member of the public, if we examine the plan itself as it's proposed, we would be able to explore those sections and provide comment before November 22nd. Is that correct?
Yes, that's just a date that we asked the board to get comments by. So you can comment up until the date of the adoption, but if there are something that we're going to be changing, the sooner we get that input, the better. We would consider any comments.
And then lastly, I didn't see anything in the presentation directly, but maybe it's built into that particular section. But how does this transportation plan impact MCOG's earlier study on the need for electric vehicle chargers in the county? Can someone speak to that?
So I believe you're referring to the ZEV readiness plan. So a lot of what came out of that would be incorporated into this RTP. So we have a lot of plans that are very specific plans. So the ZEV regional readiness plan is one of them. We have community specific plans. We have the pedestrian needs facilities plan. So this is, all of those are more specific. This is sort of our one big overarching transportation planning document. So it pulls from a lot of those specific plans.
So in examining
and
this,
there is, I'm sorry. Under the climate change policies, there is a new policy regarding electric vehicles to continue to encourage private and public investment in a countywide electric vehicle charging station network and seek funding to fill gaps in the network. So that was included in the old plan, but we've expanded it to say, and to continue to participate in the multi-agency planning efforts to expand EV charging station networks. So that's in the policy CCE 2.6.
thank you very much. I appreciate that information.
You're welcome. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other questions or comments? I'm not.
Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, then I would really strongly encourage board members to take a look and submit comments. You can consider the comments that you heard here today from the public as well. And if there are things that you see in the plan that you think should be changed, please reach out to staff, let Loretta know, and you will see a final draft of this before you in December, hopefully for adoption. And then again, we'll get the draft negative declaration will be on our website in the next couple of days, and we can send a notification out to board members, as well as anybody that's subscribed to our website actually receives notifications when changes are made. So other people would receive that as well.
And I would just like to add that, of course, this is a draft and we've already found typos. So during this process, we'll be correcting our numbers of tables and appendices and any typos. And you might notice there are some blanks in information. There's still a few things we're waiting for from local agencies. So, so yeah, we'll be working on making this a more complete document by then. And one more thing, Tess, I know that we had discussion earlier in the year on the transit performance standards. So that section has been updated. It doesn't show up in the goals, it shows up in performance standards in that section.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Yes, and this will also be going to the Technical Advisory Committee later this month for comment and a recommendation. So you may also, that would be another opportunity to work with your local agency staff members that will be part of that action.
Great. Well, thanks, Loretta and Nafili, for the update and sort of heads up of what will be on our agenda for action in December. Okay,
Thank you.
that takes us to item number 9, which is discussion and direction, exploration of options for a renewable energy network, which is a program, and climate protection agency. At our last MCOG meeting, we created an ad hoc shorthand, climate action ad hoc of directors, Hashak, Alvin Smith, and myself, and we had the opportunity to meet with both Director Nafili Barrett and Janet Orth, and with other agencies, including the Regional Climate Protection Agency in Sonoma County and the Bay Area Regional Energy Network staff. And Nafili has a nice staff report, so let's turn it over to her.
All right, thank you. So at the last meeting, you all appointed or approved an ad hoc to explore the concepts of regional energy network and or a climate protection agency. These are things that are being done in other parts of the state right now. Napa County and Sonoma County both have climate protection agencies, and then there are the original regional energy network was the Bay Area REN. There is the 3C REN, which is Santa Barbara, Ventura, and San Luis Obispo counties, and then the newly established it is IREN, and it is the Inland Empire REN. So it is San Bernardino and Riverside counties. So after meeting with staff from these agencies and the ad hoc meeting, what we have come up with is that it is possible, it sounds like it's probably unlikely that Mendocino County could be part of the Bay REN, which we border. Sonoma County is the county furthest north that is part of that, and is not completely impossible, but it sounds like it's not, at least it sounded like based on conversations with Bay REN, that it's not the best alternative for us. And so they encouraged us to look into if this was something that the area wanted to pursue, that we look into working with other areas that would want to partner with us on that. Then a regional energy network, it is a program, not an agency. So it's something that we could do with other counties, other regional governments, such as the Lake Area Planning Council or the Humboldt COG, without having to form a whole new multi-agency or multi-county agency. And so that was good news to learn that. It's also something that is completely customizable to the needs of the region. They're formed through a business plan, development of a business plan that is tailored to the region and has a budget that is tailored to whatever the REN intends to do. There are some sort of key functions that it is supposed to do. It is supposed to fill gaps that are not currently being met. It is supposed to provide services to disadvantaged or underserved communities. And there's a third, I apologize. I don't even think I have this in my staff report. Well, there's a third sort of focus area of the RENs, and I can look through my notes and find it. So this is something that it sounds like there is interest in. I know one of the big benefits that people locally are nearby us are experiencing is that it provides some significant rebates for energy efficient appliances. And so that's something that people see locally. So the other concept is the Climate Protection Agency. This is something that could be done in conjunction with the REN. So for instance, the Sonoma County's Regional Climate Protection Authority, they have a staff person in their office that works on the Bay REN. So that's something that how those two could work together, or it could be something completely independent. But that would be an agency that would work on sustainability projects that would promote sustainability throughout the region. It's something that there is a lot of interest in at the county and the city levels, but unfortunately there's not a lot of staff capacity to take on those extra efforts. And so an agency like this is a way that those things could be looked at, not only on a region-wide basis, but could help make up for some of the limits in staffing resources to do that at the local agency level. So what we're asking today is if the board supports these concepts and would like to direct staff along with the ad hoc committee or in collaboration with the ad hoc committee to continue exploring these concepts. That would involve meeting with other jurisdictions such as Humboldt County, Lake County, and other North State counties that might be interested in collaborating on this, as well as the other RENs and similar agencies. So that's the first question. And then the second question is, because this would be a region-wide effort, and so the ad hoc committee recommended that the board request member jurisdictions to also endorse exploration of these concepts. So those are the two recommendations before you today. And that concludes my staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
And we have some other examples if people want to go into deeper dive on some examples. For example, the County of Mendocino just recently received a draft energy audit of county buildings. And one of the funding sources from the state is dependent upon a local government agency, in this case, the county, to have a climate greenhouse gas inventory and climate mitigation plan, which the county currently doesn't. So that particular funding source is currently not available to the county. If we were to have one of the functions in Sonoma and Napa of the Climate Protection Agency is to assist cities and counties to develop those plans, which of course then make those agencies eligible for additional funds. So that's just an example. Okay, do we have any questions or comments from board members? Okay, Director Hashak.
Thank you, Chair Jordan. I think one of the things that needs to be repeated is that, this connection we have with Sonoma County at this point with their RIN and getting those subsidies is not sustainable, that they aren't going to go on forever like this. So we need to do something ourselves.
Yeah, and so what Dr. Hashek is pointing out is Sonoma Clean Power is providing the same rebates on a number of products, energy efficient products in Mendocino County as they provide in Sonoma, even though they're not getting a rebate through BayREN for Mendocino County customers. So they're just backfilling that. They're willing and able to do that for the time being, but they can't provide that full rebate to Mendocino County customers indefinitely without that additional subsidy through the Public Utilities Commission that goes to the BayREN. George Reinhardt. You're muted.
Yeah. So John is speaking. It's a very important point that John made. I saw that in the earlier stuff that I read about this. So this becomes a compelling reason. I've written into the chat that I think both of these ideas are really important. It was a little unclear to me in the report that we just heard. Where does the financing come from for the climate protection agencies? We heard a little bit more about how the RENs might be financed. The climate protection agencies, where does funding come for that sort of if we choose that path?
Sure, so that's a good question. The Climate Protection Agency, for instance, in Napa, they're a brand new joint powers authority that was just recently approved. They are funded, they're actually staffed out of the county's planning department. It's a pretty limited effort though. I believe it's less than 50 staff days per year total. So it's a low funding commitment for that at this point in time, but they're just getting started, and so that could change. That effort is funded with the county contributes the initial 30%, and then the balance is divided by the other jurisdictions within the region. So it's all the county and the incorporated cities are members of the JPA. So that's something that I think in this exploration, if the board provides that direction, that's something that we would have to look into. Obviously, we'd like to just talk about all the good it could do, but logistically, we have to think about those things as well.
Precisely. My follow-up comment is just that every time we bring up all these great things that we members of the community would like to do, we always run into this staffing challenge. And I completely get that, and I'm very sympathetic, but we really need to get over this because the urgency of what we're talking about here couldn't be more obvious as COP26 fumbles along right now. We really need to show that we are a region that's doing something about this and acting, and not just having more studies about something that we know is already a catastrophe. Thank you.
And before we move on, regarding the funding, one thing that I think is really important about the Regional Energy Network program is that's money that ratepayers are already paying. So it comes out of a public good fee that's built into your rate, and so it doesn't cost additional money to ratepayers to provide those benefits.
Brilliant. Good.
Jessica Stellato.
Yeah, I also support both of these ideas. I think they're wonderful. And a couple of thoughts, just perspectives to share. I was in a recent online economic development workshop with collaboration between Mendocino County and Humboldt County, and they had a lot more representatives from Humboldt County that were actually working on these kind of sustainability things, and I remember listening to them talk about their I can't remember what their program is called up there, but they have a program that helps with energy conservation and things like that, and just wishing that we had something like that here, because I feel like it's a really big missing piece. The other part with the Climate Protection Agency being able to focus on sustainability, with my background, I came here to work for the planning team when it was that, and we were working on the general plan. So I went all over the county and listened to people, and I know how strongly our values are in Mendocino County as far as sustainable lifestyles and really trying to do our part. And I also saw the planning team get folded back into the planning department and really face challenges as far as doing the visionary long-range planning parts where the sustainability measures were written in and just get bogged down by day-to-day planning. So I think having an entity that it's their job to focus specifically on the sustainability elements would be really helpful for the planning department, who has a hard time juggling all that, understandably. So those are my thoughts, and thanks for keeping these things in mind.
Okay, Peter McNamee.
Yeah, I would just add a couple of thoughts to that. I too want to speak in support of both of these recommendations. I'm hoping that MCOG won't view this as something where you're deciding one or the other. In this case, I think it would be excellent to pursue both to the fullest extent possible. And I think particularly it's opportune that we're on the first full day of COP29, and one of the biggest and most powerful messages that's coming out of COP29 is that it's the subnational governments where the rubber is really hitting the road on addressing climate change. And it's what we do at the local level that is having the biggest impacts in terms of actually reducing greenhouse gases and carbon emissions, and providing the real functional reductions that are going to save the planet from overheating. So we absolutely need this, and I would offer two additional resources. One, as far as the earlier question from George about where would monies come from, I believe that there are a wide variety of sources for funding for additional planning and development kinds of initiatives that would be particularly well suited to MCOG. As a countywide entity, and in this aspect of being part of a regional approach, the first thing I can say to you is there's over $30 million of additional new money that's been put into the California Coastal Commission's budget for this year for the specific purpose of augmenting and expanding the capacity of local governments to plan for and address sea level rise. And it seems to me that this would be an excellent component of a countywide regional climate protection agency in conjunction with the cities and the counties, because you absolutely need to have a comprehensive plan for and a strategy that interlinks all of the various local governments in addressing the impacts of sea level change, because it will impact not just one community, but it has a domino effect impacting multiple communities as you see sea levels rise and saltwater incursions tainting freshwater access, as well as creating new obstacles to transportation. So that'd be one source. I also note here that one of the specific activities of a REN would be to do workforce training and technological development. I actually have some personal knowledge of this since I have served as a past director of the California Employment Training Panel. As executive director of that, I was responsible for administering a portfolio of $250 million annually invested in incumbent worker training programs in the state. And I can tell you that that entity would be happy to partner with this organization to develop training programs that would provide career ladder jobs for advancing Mendocino County's capacity to compete in a green economy. And I'd be happy to volunteer to facilitate any connection that you need to make in order to tap into those funds through the state employment training panel. So I just, again, would want to offer support, and I, not only speaking for myself, but I know that the Grassroots Institute took up this discussion earlier this last week, and there was unanimous support for pursuing this idea by MCOG. So again, I'm officially extending our encouragement and support for that process. And I thank you for the opportunity to make those comments.
Thank you, and I'll add that developing workforce development and training programs are a significant part of the new the IREN, the Inland Empire REN that I mentioned. The others, the Bay REN, they're just kind of getting started in that area, but it was part of the initial plan for a pretty significant part of the initial plan for IREN. So that definitely could be part of a program, and that again comes in the customization of the REN and the business plan that goes into the approval. It looks like we do have a couple comments in the chat as well. James Schoonover commented that I wholeheartely support this idea and encourage the formation of a REN and the Climate Protection Agency. George Reinhardt commented the Fort Bragg Harbor needs help with SLR. And Jessica Stoll Otto commented, our community could really benefit from the training programs too. And George Reinhardt commented, this issue of job training is very important. SCP is already mentioning the issue here in Mendo. All right, thank you.
Okay, do we have any other comments or board member comments? Director Connie.
I just wanted to share that the city of Willits just a couple of years ago tried to put together an energy sustainability plan, and it became quickly evident that our tiny staff was just unable to take on that task, and it fell by the wayside, sadly. So to me, listening to the discussion about the RENs gives me hope that if there was a county-wide group that was working on this, it could really benefit the smaller cities by sort of sharing the burden of getting these tasks done. So I like this.
Director Brown.
Yeah, thank you. So in reviewing the ad hoc recommendation and then further down looking at the staff recommendation, they certainly both seem to be in line with what everybody is kind of desirous of at this point. So just looking at that direction, it seems to me that could be in the form of a motion to pursue staff's recommendation.
Would you like to make that as a motion?
Certainly.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second that. I was about to say the same thing, George.
Okay, all right, we've got a motion on the table. Any more comments? Not seeing any. Can we have a roll call?
Yes. Director Brown,
Yes.
Director Connie,
Yes.
Director Alban Smith,
Yes.
Director Ignacio,
Yes.
Director Haschak,
Yes.
Director Alstrand,
Yes.
and Chair Jurdy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. And I appreciate the time that Nafili and Janet and others have put into it already. I mean, I know you're busy with other projects, but I do think there's a high probability of success with this. Thanks.
I'm sorry, just for notation purposes, who was it that made the motion?
That was
Director Brown.
Jim Brown.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we're going to recess as the Policy Advisory Committee and reconvene as the Regional Transportation Planning Agency. Do we have a motion to ratify the action of the Policy Advisory Committee?
So
Lisa
moved.
moved in second.
Okay,
All
moved
right.
by Director Hashtag, second by Director Alban-Smith.
Got that? Director Brown,
Yes.
Connie,
Yes.
Alban Smith,
Yes.
Ignacio,
Yes.
Aschak,
Yes.
and Jurdy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That takes us to reports, information. Do we have any updates, additional updates from Caltrans?
Yeah, I touched on it earlier on the Clean California, and I thought I'd just give a little bit more information. Caltrans District 1 received $4.6 million in funding for infrastructure enhancement projects, and 12 projects have been selected in the district. This portion of the funding is separate from the litter removal component that is also happening. Like I mentioned earlier, these projects are still subject to modifications in headquarters, but I did want to share with you the projects that are moving forward in Mendocino County. I did mention the one in Covelo with the scope including angled parking, street trees, raised planters, art and lighting, central Boonville beautification with crossing improvements, curb extensions, and street trees. Hopland Main Street connectivity with a scope including gateway monuments and art features. And last, Old Hopland Russian River Bridge connectivity project, a pedestrian activated beacon and additional non-motorized signage on State Route 175 between Hopland and Old Hopland. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the update. Any questions? Okay, Jessica Stellato.
I had a question about, I'm still trying to figure these pieces out. So is public art a part of one of the projects, it sounds like? And is that listed under the 162 project?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
good.
public art.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure if that was just in the Walla one. And I wasn't sure, do you know the scope of how far south the project begins in the town? And also just to throw out there, and maybe just for the angled parking might not end up being the safest because we already had a line of sight issue around corners and we have really big trucks. So hopefully we'll get Tom Fitzgerald at our MAC meeting and he'll hear from this directly, but I just kind of wanted to share it here too.
Sounds good. Yeah, a lot of this stuff came from plans that are already in place in the community. So that's perhaps where that angled parking came from, but sounds like there'll be opportunities to vet this projects further. I have post miles for the project, so I can pull that up, but I don't have it with me right now. So maybe I'll put it in the chat as the meeting moves forward.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks.
It looks like we do have one question from a member of the public in the chat on this also. Dave Schvack asked, are components of the Wallala Streetscape Master Plan eligible for funding under the Clean California program? So Tasha, do you want to try to answer that?
Sure. You can probably follow up, but just immediately, a lot of the Clean California program has a very quick turnaround. The projects are meant to be built very quickly, and we also ran into a lot of issues with the Coastal Commission requirements. So unfortunately, a lot of projects had to be dropped that are with Coastal Commission complex and quick turnaround.
Yes, and that was going to be my response also. So there might be some components that would technically be eligible, but because of the very, very short time frame involved in this, it just wouldn't be feasible to actually implement any of them.
Okay, well, thank you for answering. Director Connie.
I have a different question. So are you done with your question there and answer, Nafili?
Yes.
Okay. Tasha, you mentioned something about litter removal. Is there an update on, I'm sorry if I missed that earlier in the meeting, is there something about that you had information on? Is there any new development on county roads or Caltrans roads there in the county?
I don't have information on the litter removal component of Clean California. I can get back to you because that is moving forward. Do you have specific questions about when?
Yes, we've been getting a lot of comments in Willits from residents who are very concerned about the level of litter that's showing up on the roads, particularly the section of Highway 20 to the south of Willits before you get to 101, and on Highway 20 on the way over to the coast. Just seems like it's worse than it ever has been. And a lot of the litter removal signs have been removed, especially after the highway bypass. So residents are wondering, what can they do?
Yeah, good question. I will follow up with you on that.
Director Hashak?
Thank you, Chair Judy. So another part of that, Tasha, is that from my conversations with Tom Fitzgerald, is that they're applying for a large item dump amnesty day for at least the Covelo area, possibly others. So hopefully that comes true. And I guess it's going to review on November 18th, I think.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I did hear about that. And there are other locations, so I can see if there's something in Willits area.
Okay. If there are no other questions for Caltrans, thank you, Tasha, for fielding all those. We can go to, let's see, next would be Mendocino Transit Authority if there's an update there. Not seeing an update there. Then do we have an update on North Coast Rail Authority? Is there any updates there?
Well, we haven't had a meeting lately, but we have one scheduled for next week. So that's all I have.
Don, do you know if that will be the final meeting of Men's here?
I don't think it will be the final, but we keep struggling along, and it will transition shortly, I think within 6 months, to the Great Redwood Trail Agency.
All right, well, thanks for the update. Can we have MCOG staff summary of meetings? Are there any meetings that you would like to highlight or focus on?
I don't think we have anything to highlight, but can answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, not seeing any. How about for administrative staff? You have some announcements.
Yes, so you may have all noticed Monica Galliani is not in the meeting today. So she did unfortunately leave us for another position. So we actually both the admin and planning side have support staff positions open. So we just wanted to make that announcement in case any of you know of somebody interested in a job working with a great team. The positions are listed on indeed.com, or people can contact our offices for more information.
All right, thanks for the update. Any other miscellaneous reports?
I don't have any.
And just the note that our next meeting date will be Monday, December 6th. Okay, planning staff.
I don't have anything to report. Neely mentioned the open position, but nothing further. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, that takes us to MCOG director reports. Anything else that someone would like to report? We could probably report that all of our agencies have vacancies. If anyone's searching for a job, contact us.
Yes, I think everybody's got vacancies right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, is there any CalCog delegate update?
No updates from CalCog.
All right, well then at 10:55, it looks like we are adjourned.
No, wait,
Oh,
we've got
what?
closed session.
One more thing.
That's right. Unusual.
Yes, right. Yes, unusual for us to have closed session. So we do, board members have a separate Zoom link. Hopefully you received that in your email. We will leave this one up and running so that we can report back following the closed session. But board members will need to use that separate link to join the closed session. James actually left this meeting just a couple minutes ago and started the separate closed session.
Okay, all right. So Director Hashak.
Yeah, when was that link sent out?
Sure, it was.
It was last week.
I got about
Let me
the
tell
same
you
time.
exactly. It was an email from Janet, and it
October
was
28th.
yes, the 28th, and it was sent as a high priority message.
I can resend it to anybody who needs it now.
No, I'm good.
You got it?
Okay, so we board member will log out of this meeting and then log into the closed session, but we will come back into open session to report out.
Yes. Yes, correct.
Okay.
We'll just keep this meeting open while you do that.
Will we be all coming back to this session, or are we just going to have the chair or a representative come back?
Good point. I don't think we need to come back. I'll come back. We could just I'll
Just
report
need
out.
to report on any actions taken.
Right. There will be no more actions after this. This is the last item on the agenda, so it'll just be the report out. So not everyone would need to come back.
Okay, thanks.
Could you please resend that link to me? Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
in closed session, the board took action. Would you like to report out the action?
Yes. So in closed session, the board approved a settlement in the case Dewey White versus Mendocino County of Government or Council of Governments, Mendocino Superior Court case number SCUK CVPT 18-71179 by a unanimous roll call vote.
Move to adjourn.
Well,
All right.
with
Thanks,
that,
everyone.
Do we
Good
have a
work,
quorum for
everyone.
that? Do we need a second for that? Adjournment?
I don't think we know.
All
Thank
right.
you guys. Be well.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in December.